What's good, YouTube? Capital G here. Today I'm going to be talking about Tech Genus Hyper Librarian, or as I have been referring to her as, dumbass bitch who lets you auto win by drawing a bunch of cards in synchro swarms who happens to work at the public library down the street. Basically, the two decks that spam this card like no other and usually win when they do would be obviously represented here, Plant Synchro, a deck you guys are all familiar with, and then Water Synchro, a deck you might not be as familiar with, but I assure you it is just as explosive as Plant Synchro, maybe even more because of the anime controllers. Basically, what Water Synchro is, it's basically Formula Monarchs just without the Monarchs. They basically took out all the Monarchs except for Caius so that they could run like Tengu and they could just Synchro Swarm more and, you know, make their formula plays a little easier, you know, because they have more ways to get Treeborn in the graveyard, and Undyne lets you get Fishborg in the graveyard too, which the deck usually could have some problems with. So I played TG, I played against it. From my experience, basically, if you get Tech Genus out and your opponent doesn't have an answer that turn, you usually draw enough cards off Hyper Librarian to let you win the game. And I'm just going to talk about some of the cards that you could play in your deck, whether sided or mained. I even think a lot of these can be mained, that can help you potentially, you know, like limit this card's abilities or, you know, stop it from hitting the field entirely. The first would be Skill Drain. Skill Drain fits in easily in a lot of good anti-meta decks like Tech Genus, Blackwings, and Hero Beat. Those decks usually run a lot of 17 to 1900 monsters, and the decks that spam this don't. You know, they run a bunch of little monsters that become into big synchros. If you skill drain, not only do you shut off Hyper Librarian, but you make all their monsters vanilla, and you really won't win many games when, you know, you can't use your Spore, or, you know, you can't use your Swap Frog or Gen X Undyne to do what they need to do, to ditch cards in the graveyard so that you can start going off. So this is also really good. And if you can keep an 18 or 1900 monster on the field, you'll probably just be able to beat them down and they won't be able to go off and get any of their plays. Raw Oppression, a card that you guys already know about, which is, it's pretty much played in everything except for like the decks that run Treeborn Frog. You can even run it in Glad Beast decks that need to special summon, like Samurai. I mean, once you get your ideal setup, you just flip the Oppression over, they can't synchro anymore, and it's pretty much just lights out. I think Oppression is basically staple in every deck except maybe Glad's and Water Synchro, although I might play Oppression and Gladiator Beast right now, just because it's too auto win if you get Librarian on the field to risk that. Effect Veiler, a card that everybody and their mama is running except for Glad's because they have Chariot. What does Effect Veiler let you do? Well, it lets you not only negate Hyper Librarian, and it's hard as hell to negate this card because outside of Chariot and Debunk, there really aren't that many answers to it. But it also lets you kill the synchro enabling plays that people like to do after they have Librarian on the field. You know, like Junk and Debris and stuff like that. It also just stops pretty much all synchro activating effects outside of like Stardust, you know, your Scrap Dragons, Black Roses, Trishulas, all that good stuff. So Effect Veiler is definitely excellent. Excuse me. And Max C, a card that hasn't been seeing a ton of play, but because of Tech Genus Hyper Librarian, I think is going to see a lot more play. What Max C basically allows you to do is it makes your opponent's big pushes and big plays counterproductive. You know what I mean? If you have Hyper Librarian on the field and I discard a Max C, you really have to either end your turn leaving your Librarian unprotected on the field, or you can try and go off, summon, you know, formulas and do your Treeborns and Fishborgs and all that nonsense with your Tengus, and you're letting me draw a whole bunch of cards. And, you know, you're giving me a chance to draw my outs to your field, you know, my True Nade, my Gores, my Dark Hole, and so on and so forth. So it puts you in a really bad position, and it's often going to be a 1-for-1. You can just wait until they play Reborn or Debris Dragon or Junk, and you can just chain this off of that. Or they play Treeborn Frog, you pitch this, or, you know, when they try and Fishborg, like they go Treeborn, they pitch for Fishborg, you discard this, you draw a card because they summoned Fishborg. It's like, are you just going to leave those on the field? You know, if you formula, you're going to draw, but I'm going to draw too. So, you know what I mean? And then this is a card that was really hot at Australian Nats. Six Samurai ran this, and he topped with it. He ran two of these. It's actually a pretty good card, and a lot of people ran it during Teledad format. They were like siding it in mirror matches and stuff before oppression got really big. Black Horn of Heaven is really good. It's basically, think of it as this. It's a Solemn Warning for synchros and for inherent summons. There aren't a ton of those that you can stop. It doesn't stop, Lone Fire Blossom or Tengu or, stuff like that. But it can stop, any synchro summon. It can stop Machina Fortress, Christia Hyper, what's it called? Master Hyperion, stuff like that. So, boss monsters like Dead and Judgment Dragon, they die to this. But it's just an easy answer to a synchro summon, you know what I mean? And it's a counter trap, so your opponent, they can't play like Trap Stun or whatever. Also stops Foltro, totally forgot about him. So, and then the last card that I don't actually have, but I will be picking up is Fiendish Chain, and it's actually starting to get a little expensive right now. Fiendish Chain is basically, it's like a mix between Effect Veiler and like Dimensional Prison, but it doesn't quite do exactly what either one does. I like it because not only because it can stop Tech Genus Hyper Librarian, but again, it stops everything that Veiler stops. It's easy because you can use it to stop attacks too, and then use it to stop those effects in the same turn. Like, let's say your opponent summons Hyper Librarian, right? But they don't have what they need to explode, or they might want to try and summon a formula. You can flip over Fiendish Chain, target this, target Hyper Librarian, and now your opponent doesn't get the draw. They don't get that effect, but they can't attack with TG Librarian either. So Fiendish Chain is definitely a good card, and to be honest, Fiendish Chain fits in a lot of decks like Gravekeepers, Tech Genus, Blackwings. A lot of decks are getting Fiendish Chain right now. It works amazing in scraps, and I'm going to try and pick some up. So let me know what you guys think about Tech Genus Hyper Librarian. I think this card needs to burn in hell. I think it's one of the worst synchros that Konami has ever come up with, and that they didn't test it, at least not with formula anyway. So let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching.